It's Wednesday, September 25th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Today on the show, we are talking about homeschooling, the landscape, the benefits, and the challenges. Parents, are you homeschooling your kids? Do you have questions about it? The lines are open. All right, signal heads. That's my nickname for all of you, by the way. I'm kidding. All right, listeners, for this show, when I say homeschooling, what comes to mind? Now, keep that thought and think about it at the end of the show and think about whether or not that initial thought is the same 55 minutes from now. So here's some context for you. My colleague Jenna Head has been reporting on the topic of homeschooling, right? So at the start of this school year across Newfoundland and Labrador, more than 60,000 children in Newfoundland and Labrador went back to school, right? Here's a stat from last year. 2,006 students in this province received education outside the public school system. That 274 families opted to homeschool their children. We're waiting for this year's numbers. Jenna had mentioned to me that new numbers should be out by the end of the month. So those are some numbers for you. We've got you that bit of homework there for the show of just thinking about your thoughts on homeschooling, and we'll see where that goes by the end of it. So today, folks, like I just said, for what we're talking about, it's the landscape of homeschooling, the benefits, the challenges, and if you're a parent out there and you want to join this conversation on whether if you homeschool your kids or if you've got questions on it, the lines are open, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. You can text us, 709-327-8206, emails thesignal@cbc.ca, and I have a couple of your emails already. I'll be reading them shortly, but let me get to my guests. I'll start on my right. No relation, Dietra Walsh. Welcome back. How you doing?
Good to see you.
Today, your title is parent.
Yes, I am parent today.
Parent, and that's all I wrote was parent. Florence Manning is here, a grade 8 student.
Hey.
Bigger title than your mom there,
Yes.
right? All right, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks for. Well, this is a repeat for you on the show too, because I chatted with you. Was it in Gander?
Yeah.
Yeah, at M&L. Well, good to see you again. We've got Tabitha Hicks, parent, also owner/operator, Magic Storm Events, and we'll explain what that is now in a bit. Hi, Tabitha. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having us.
And Gina Martin, also a parent, obviously, and owner-operator, Magic Storm Events. Hi.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
All right, folks, here we are. Everyone sitting tightly here in the room, ready for the discussion. Florence Manning, homeschooling. Can you talk about the start, like why homeschooling for you?
I think I was at a public school for a while. I was at a private school for a while. And there was a lot of issues within the private school before I switched. And basically, I was ready for a change. So unenrolled. And then we basically, a week later, we were like, well, I think homeschooling might be the best option for now. So originally, we were just going to do that for half the year and then maybe go back this year, but decided to stay and do it again this year.
What were the conversations like to get this decision made with yourself and your parents, your mom?
I think with my mom, obviously, she was all ready for it, and she sacrificed a lot to be here and homeschool me. But I think it was a little harder with my dad because I think people have a lot of thoughts and feelings about a lack of socialization. Yeah, and I can promise that's not an issue because I do so many activities, and I have no lack of socialization because I'm homeschooled.
Run us through then what, and we can drill more into this later, but just give me a brief explanation of like what's a day or week like when you're being homeschooled as a grade 8 student?
Well, we have a space at Magic Storm Events that we go to, and we work there. And I think as somebody with a neurodiversity, I have ADHD, working from home can be really hard for me because there's so many other things I could be doing other than doing school. Yeah, like totally. So I think that's really helpful. And, we do 3 subjects every 3 days of the week and 2 subjects the other 2 days. And I think splitting it up and we work pretty fast. And I think that pace is good for me. So we get a lot done. And then I have the afternoons to kind of work on school, music, all that kind of stuff.
And you mentioned the social and socializing part of it. So what are the things that you're doing for socializing?
Well, I've been in Shalloway for a few years now. Yeah. I do CFPA, Courtney Fowler Performance Academy. I'm in voice. I do guitar. I play a lot of gigs. So I'm having no lack of socialization. I do lots of
No,
stuff.
full schedule.
Yeah, I'm very busy.
All right, let me go to your mom then, Deetra. What about yourself for the conversation and the thought around homeschooling for Flo?
Yeah, and I think important to think about this as obviously an experience that we had with our daughter and thinking about her needs, but also a larger sort of speaks to a larger thing, I guess. When we were moving toward this and when things were happening both in the public system and the private system, and I will say, like, Florence is, she's attended public school in the north. She's attended public school in rural Newfoundland. She's attended public school or private school in Norway. She's been in a lot of school environments. And I think we came to a point where we just realized that the bricks and mortar school environment wasn't the right fit for her for a long time, I think. And, partly because, when we got the diagnosis of ADHD, it made sense. That all kind of fit together. Oh, now I know why the fit hasn't been right. It wasn't about her at all. It wasn't, not that it is, but why can't you? What's the problem here? We all went to school and that sort of thing. So for us, it became a conversation around what's best for her. And as you begin to know your child more, as they grow older and you're supported through, a diagnostic process, if you need that around neurodiversity, I would say as a parent, you then know what your child what the child needs best. And so, like I said, we talked about it. There were concerns, and we'll talk about stigma and myths about homeschooling, I think we need to debunk those because, people sort of look at you strangely when you say we're homeschooling.
Look, even for me, just without thinking about it, there's stuff that's floating around in the back of your brain on the topic, right? And that's from just growing up, watching television and just seeing what's in the media that's just floating around out there. But then when you actually, for me, as the host of this show, preparing for this and also knowing a bit with coverage over like in this year especially, ideas change and like some facts start to go in there. And it's by talking about it that we can help, the stigma and myths and debunking, all that happens for when people hear from folks like yourselves, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, I'll finish this thought up by saying that, we started last year kind of toward the end of the school year. We got our bearings and we're back at it this year. I'm fortunate enough to have a very flexible employer and a great space now to work in at Magic Storm Events with her. And this is in my opinion, as an educator as well, this is the right fit for her right now in her life. And I can see her thrive. We don't have any issues around curriculum or understanding, and there's no anxiety around math. We're sailing through the Pythagorean theorem like nobody's business.
See, this is where mine fell off, right? Like once we got past Pythagorean and that theorem, I was like, that was the last thing I think I understood. And Florence, I will say, thanks so much for being here today, because to have the student perspective on this, it is gigantic and really important for folks to, I think, hear from a grade 8 student about their own thoughts about being homeschooled. Tabitha, what about yourself and your family?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I have 3 kids, and my oldest is actually homeschooled. He is autistic, and he did really well from K to 6 in the public school system. And when he moved to junior high, it just wasn't working, transferring between classes, the bigger crowds, and they just don't have supports. They don't have supports they need for the special needs kids, for autistic, for ADHD. It's just not there. And we started, actually, I was speaking with Gina about it because she homeschooled all 3 of her kids. And yeah, we started with that, and he's doing really well. And this year, he's starting online school, actually, at a private school in Ontario. So he does it from home, but he has the curriculum online, and that's working really well for him. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you first started speaking with Gina about it, what's that like as a parent to be like, hey, I'm curious because I don't, like, 'cause you don't know until you know, right?
Well, 100%. Yeah, for sure. And she's...
I'm a little outspoken sometimes. So I was very much like, hey, here's an option.
And that's what you need sometimes, too, because you have these myths in the back of your head where you're not sure what's what, but it works.
All right. So, Gina, you have a friend coming to you, and you're outspoken. What was your message? What were you saying? And then I'll ask you about your own family experience.
So basically, all I was really saying was, this isn't the only way. There is another option. There are other options that, your child is not going to, and we'll debunk this as well, but miss out on opportunities, on, their next level of education and things. You're not limiting your child just because you're choosing an alternate method to ensuring that they're getting the best educational experience possible. So, yeah.
All right. And then tell us a bit more about yourself and your family.
So, myself and my husband have 3 teenage daughters now. Pray for us.
3.
3, yes. Currently 13, 15, and 16. And
The best ages.
Yep. So, we had been discovering a few issues along the way during primary, elementary, but you're kind of listening to the supposed experts saying it's all normal and it's, just XYZ is the reason why it's not a good fit or whatever. And I mean, they were doing well. It's just we weren't sure if they were thriving. And then when the pandemic hit in 2020, we said, well, we've always kind of had the thought in the back of our mind, what if we tried? And given the upheaval that the education system was facing during the pandemic, we said, well, we kind of don't have anything to lose right now by trying. If we're ever going to try it, now's the time. And we haven't looked back since.
Wow. All right. So we all have a bit of your family situation, some great context for the show. Folks, you're listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. Today we're talking about homeschooling, the landscape, the benefits and challenges. Parents, are you homeschooling your kids? Or folks, do you have questions about it? The lines are open, and we got a full house here of folks to talk about it. 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Text us, 709-327-8206. Emails thesignal@cbc.ca. Here with me in the studio, Deetra Walsh, parent, Florence Manning, grade 8 student, Tabitha Hicks, parent, and Gina Martin, parent. And we'll get to the Magic Storm event shortly, but first, we've talked about it already a couple times, about misconceptions and some perhaps stigma around it. There's the socialization part of it. What are the other misconceptions out there that when it comes to homeschooling? Flo. I like how you raised your hand.
I think a big one is that if you're homeschooled, your family's very religious, which I think that's a really big one. And I think that's so not true. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, it's
There's nothing
some
wrong
people
with that.
perhaps, but then a bunch of others no, right?
Yeah, and I
Okay.
think a lot of people think oh, your family must be really religious or anti this or anti that. And it's well, that's not true. They're just, it's different circumstances for different people.
Looking for, and like your mom already laid out, right? Looking for the best fit for you educationally speaking for what's available, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Anyone else?
I think people will think you're weird.
Yeah.
Are you weird?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I remember when I was going to school, and at that time, in rural Newfoundland, you'd never heard too much about homeschooling. And when you did hear about it, people would be like, Mike, what's wrong with them? And I think
it's
that...
right? Like the reaction or what you said, but it's just right. And then silence.
Yeah.
Also, there's moments where I don't want to people will ask me, oh, what school do you go to? And I'm I'm homeschooled. And it's if I don't give them the context, they kind of treat me weirdly. I'm the context here is school didn't work for me, wasn't fast enough, I needed more advanced stuff. That's the context. It's not because my family's really religious or I was doing really bad in school.
I think that's a misconception too, that, well, not even so much a misconception, but it's also feels as though homeschoolers have to justify their choice.
True. Yes.
Anytime you say I'm homeschooled, there's a plethora of questions that immediately follow. Oh, well, what's that like? Oh, I bet you got an awful teacher. The jokes start or the whatever, because they just don't understand, and it comes from a place of not understanding. But they also, I think have bought into the myths that, well, we're overprotective of our children. We don't want them exposed to the horrible things in a public school, or, we're keeping them under rocks. And we're just making an alternative choice for their education. It's not about those other things sometimes. Sometimes it is, I'm sure, because there's so many different reasons, so many for choosing this path. But I really think people have an XYZ assumption of these are the only reasons that you would possibly want to do that. And it must be because you're overprotective or your child is just not capable of keeping up with the other kids.
We get a lot of that one. People think because my son's autistic that he's not smart or not capable, and couldn't be further from the truth. Well,
he's the
Max.
most brilliant child. Like, he knows far more than I ever will.
Yeah, and he definitely excels in certain more like science and math, and the English is more of like one that he needs more help with, but he does really well and does better with independent work.
I'm wondering if I could just have actually, teacher, you're going to say something?
I just wanted to put one more. We talked a little bit about the socialization, but I just wanted to make this point as well because I was reading a bit on this. We have the assumption when you talk about the socialization piece that school is a positive space for socialization. And that is not always the case.
Yeah.
I can
Often not the case.
Often not, and increasingly so for any number of reasons. So part of dispelling that myth of not getting enough socialization, well, if your child is actually harmed in the process of the socialization environment at school, then that is not okay, whatever that harm looks like.
Trauma should not be a prerequisite for a childhood.
No.
Or for an education.
And I think
the whole concept of, they're not going to be prepared for real life. I would not put up with a lot of those things in the workplace.
That's the question I wanted to ask, and you've already asked and answered it, which is fantastic. Because a lot of people will be like, well, the real world is hard and da-da-da-da-da. It's like, sure, but high school or junior high or whatever, it can be such a uniquely, for certain folks, horrible experience that will not ever be replicated in an adult life. And also, if it is, someone's getting fired, there's HR, there's all there's
you're
stuff
gonna
that's
do
happening,
something
right?
about it.
I also think, I'm 13. I shouldn't have inappropriate things being said to me by boys at my school, which is what was happening to me last year. And, inappropriate things were happening. And I was like, sure. My family was like, not my mom, obviously, but they were like, oh, the real world is hard. He's just got to do it. Just got to push on through. And I was like, so that actually doesn't work if I'm going to be having to deal with trauma in 10 years over this.
Yeah.
So.
No, and it takes a lot to stand up and voice that this is not okay, right? I mean, that's leadership and courage right there.
And school is often not the best place to teach you to stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. No, it's not till you I don't know. I didn't figure that stuff out till later.
Exactly.
Way later. Still figuring it out. I'm 44. Let's go to the phones. We got Lisa on the line, calling from St. John's. Hi.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, I'm just in my car, so sometimes you never know.
Yeah.
I just wanted to call to talk about my experience with homeschooling. So this is about year 5 for me with my daughter, and it wasn't an easy choice. And I guess from my family context, I had 2 daughters who were 3 years in the difference, and one of my older daughter had a fantastic experience in school. She was, she had a student council in high school. She flourished there. She had a fantastic experience. And then I had another child who just couldn't thrive in that scenario of elementary school, junior high. So I guess, just to piggyback on what everybody's been saying, you make individual choices for your kids based on their needs. And it doesn't work for everybody, this traditional school system. And so I had to make a choice for my youngest one. And in our world, in her world, in my world, no question, it was the best parenting choice I have ever made for my daughter.
Thank you for... Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that, about the whole myths around around school, around homeschooling. Sometimes we make these choices and then we have to fight with the school system about why we're making this choice. We have to advocate within our families about why we're making this choice. Not everybody around you sees it the same way, and making the choice itself can be the hardest part, and then the rest of it gets easier. So if people out there are wondering about it and how to make it work, there's so many community supports out there right now. The school system actually has supports in there so that people can participate in the school system. And one of the bigger problems with the myths that are out there are actually within the school system. So if you are trying to communicate with a school principal, for example, who doesn't even know that homeschool is being supported by the provincial government and the Department of Education, then the principal says, well, I don't believe in homeschooling, but that doesn't matter. If the principal doesn't believe in homeschooling, it's a supported system within the Department of Education. And the myths are, the community itself is loosening up on these myths, but the myths within the school system were the hardest for me. It wasn't just the socialization, it was trying to get the people from grade 6 to understand that what I was trying to do wasn't some radical thing that wasn't being supported by another part of the system. So there's a lot of education within the traditional school system that needs to change, because when parents make decisions, like can my kid come for gym and music and then do all the rest of their academics at home? The answer to that should always be yes.
Yeah.
And it isn't always, where there's a lot of myths within the system itself.
What else how do you break that down within the system then? Because like there's conversations like this today. There's on the radio. There online pieces in the media. Also, there's Facebook groups of parents sharing, and then folks talking to their families. But within the system, do you have any thoughts on what needs to happen to break things down?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that need to happen in the traditional system around a lot of things, like even just around the fact that we have this harmful notion that we all do inclusive education really well. And we don't. Our school system doesn't do inclusion really well. And if there is that harmful narrative that's baked into the system, then we have an extra piece of really stressful advocating to do. So if we were able to like remove those blinders and kind of really question, are we really doing a good job at inclusion? I argue that we're not. Authentic inclusion is very rare. It happens in pockets of schools in different places, but it's not everywhere. It's not universal. I mean, inclusion is like world peace. We all want it, but it's very complicated. And so, if we can get a better handle on inclusion, and then really school systems go, yeah, you know what, we need to do better, then they'd also open their minds to this whole idea about alternate settings for education, which my kid is thriving in, and we wouldn't have had this opportunity if we had stayed in the school system, no question.
Lisa, thanks so much for the call.
Okay, thanks.
Cheers. Lisa there, calling from St. John's. Folks, the lines are open, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Text us, 709-327-8206. Emails, thesignal@cbc.ca. We are, of course, talking about homeschooling, the landscape, the benefits, the challenges. And folks, parents, if you're homeschooling your kids, we'd love to hear from you. Also, if you've got questions about it, I've got parents and a student here in the studio who are living it. So there you go for the folks in the studio. Any thoughts on what Lisa was saying? Because I saw some nods and some folks were writing stuff down. And Florence, your hand's up again, so I'll go to you, the best student in the class here today.
I think when she was talking about inclusive education, I think inclusive education is a lot more than just including people with neurodiversities. That's a lot of it, obviously. I think it's also about including like students who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, are a minority, race, and all that kind of stuff. Totally. All that kind of stuff. And I think the English stream in the school system ends up kind of being a place where people get put if English isn't their first language, they're neurodiverse, this or that, which ends up making it a lot less inclusive, even though I don't know how to explain it very well. But
as opposed to the immersion system, right?
Yeah.
Or the immersion line for education.
Because people see all kinds of different people in the English stream and they're like, oh, that looks so inclusive. It's not, though. It's actually just a place where people get put when they can't, when other people in the school system think that they can't do something.
Right. Thoughts, Mom?
I don't know if I can follow that up.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, no, I agree completely with Florence. And, I think that's one of, and Lisa articulated it so well. Do we really know how to do inclusion? Are we serious about that project? And what do we need to do to change that? I think your question about what can we do, it always starts with the conversation. And so that's why I'm so thankful for we're here today and talking about this, and this conversation is starting. I think this conversation needs to be at the forefront all the time, because there's a lot of information to shed on this. And I also want to say, and we'll get into perhaps some critiques in a second, and certainly Lisa alluded to some, and we've alluded to some here. This is not a finger-pointing exercise.
No, this is a conversation to, for me, the way I look at and when you came to me and say, hey, do you want to do a show on this? I was like, yeah, absolutely. Because for all these conversations that we do every day on this show, for me, it's about empathy and understanding and pushing things forward so that we can all together, hopefully, improve things, right? That's how policy gets changed. That's how opinions get changed, and there's more understanding. And sometimes you change your mind, right? That's all of it for this type of a thing. So it's not just critiquing, it's all of it.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And there's a collective effort, and there's a lot of us.
There is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I got an email. I got a couple emails. Hold on, let me scroll down. All right. Good morning, Adam. This is the email I'm reading, obviously. My name is Victor Weston, and my family has recently moved to the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. We have homeschooled our children for quite some time, and we're dismayed by Newfoundland homeschool policies. While we have not had any problems with the school board, the stories of other homeschool parents regarding their relationship with the school governing bodies were shocking. We homeschool because we are dissatisfied with the academic performance of the public education system, the lack of discipline in the classroom, and the many negative social outcomes, such as bullying and the mental health crisis that is sweeping this nation. The email goes on to read, the homeschool policy in Newfoundland appears to discourage homeschooling with bureaucratic red tape and an adversarial relationship between the school board and parents. Some key points that I fail to see the logic in is we require special permission to use curriculums outside of the Newfoundland school system, school curriculum, and that we must register our children with their zoned school. The phobia of Newfoundland government to use outside curriculums is especially weird in that most curriculums aim to meet the educational requirements of all provinces and states within Canada and the United States, making them very comprehensive, covering many topics that are not included in Newfoundland curriculum. It has also never been explained to me to any satisfaction why we need to register our school zone to an outside observer. It appears that the only reason that this is required is so that they can receive the funds for that student. It seems to me that at best this is unethical and at worst defrauding the taxpayer. Another paragraph left. We moved here from Manitoba, where the education system encourages homeschooling. They require reporting but leave the curriculum to the parents' discretion, and they do not force you to associate with any school. We have heard from many parents in Newfoundland being harassed and requiring legal assistance to navigate the government's overreach. I recommend that all homeschooling parents in Newfoundland get a membership with the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, as they will help navigate any troubles with the government and their right to educational freedom. I hope this letter does not discourage parents from trying homeschooling. We have loved our homeschool journey. Our children are thriving and are all well ahead academically of their grade level. Thank you for lending your platform to hearing these often forgotten voices. Respectfully yours, Victor Weston. So there's lots there. Any thoughts then from what Victor wrote?
100% for my son. We still get asked to sign the student assistant form for them to apply for student assistant funds for him and time allotted. Another thing is, I did say at the beginning that he's registered for online school in Ontario. Yeah. And they said when we registered him, it was $700 or $800, whatever it was, for like private tuition. And they asked if Newfoundland government was going to pay for it. And when I registered, when I actually looked up the information, there's only a few provinces in the whole country that don't pay for it.
Oh.
Yeah. So Newfoundland is one of them. I think there's Newfoundland and maybe one other province. Every other province, if you're homeschooling your child, that allotted amount of money would go to you to help educate your child for privately done, I guess, activities, learning, things like that. But here, they don't allow that.
They don't allow it. Anyone else on this?
So much to say.
That's the other bit. I was like, there's a lot in the email, and it's like, well,
Sure, where
which
to
of the
start.
things should I start with?
Yes, the overreach of the entire public school administrative, however you want to call it, is, I think, detrimental to the growth of homeschooling in this province and the acceptance of it as a viable option. The policies. A policy is just that. It is supposed to help withhold, explain the law. But the policies here don't match the law. The right, in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, I believe, and I could be misquoting a little bit, but from what I understand, one of the things included there is that the parent has the first choice on how their child is educated. And we are told here we are not qualified, we have no idea what we're doing, you're not allowed to do that. There are so many roadblocks placed in front of folks trying to just learn information about what their options are. Yes, you're allowed to bring your child for certain classes to their designated school. That should be the one perk to being tied to a school, if that's something that you wish to use, to utilize. But the challenges put in front of you often prevent you from making a proper educated choice yourself for your family.
And sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, we were talking about like the overreach and the stigma around parents who homeschool being overprotective and stuff. But I feel like the school system here in Newfoundland is the one being a little overprotective, and they're kind of stepping a little past the boundary of this is your business, this isn't your business. Because like some of the stuff they ask you is wild. Like that is none of your business. Like if you want to go in, say you want to do homeschool, but you want to go in for math class, that should not be a fight you need to have. Your parents, who are already probably not working to homeschool you or working like my mom part-time, like they should not have to, A, spend the money on legal aid, because for school, there should be no lawyers and legal aid involved with school. That should not have to happen.
Yeah, and where you're saying, especially through this conversation, we're like, well, if homeschooling is a right, and then like the mechanisms are the levers are pulled to make that happen, and then it's just like, but hey, math class, sure, we'd like you to go in for this. You're asking, why should that be a fight? Why is that a legal fight, as opposed to something that's like, well, if this is established, and also then to have the student in for this one class, I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying for why, like for that, it should be a lot easier. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to come back to the point that Tabitha made and around funding support. We as taxpayers contribute to the public school system. Right now, I would say, having homeschooled, I provided all of the supplies. I've gotten extra things. I've paid for extra resources. And if I had to get tutors, I'd have to, like we were saying, you'd have to pay for it all yourself. And at this point, I haven't checked it, but any CPAs out there can inform us. I don't think there's any tax incentive or tax piece when you file your taxes for homeschooling.
And we're lucky enough to be able to afford to pay for that, but not everybody is.
Right. So why isn't there? I really think, again, homeschooling is a viable alternative. It needs to be on the conversational table. It needs to be encouraged. There needs to be a policy environment that doesn't make it feel like it's a big secret or like it's in some sort of black book.
It makes it seem like the government is like insecure, about people being homeschooled. Like it's like they have this big insecurity about it. It's like
I think it's a very old-fashioned way of looking at things.
Yes.
Yeah,
that,
for sure.
That's the
word paternalistic comes to mind for some reason. I don't know why. Let's go back to the phones. Sarah Barnes is on the line, calling from Nova Scotia. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thanks for listening and texting and then calling. I appreciate it. And let us know your situation, and then if there's any thoughts you have around the conversation so far.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for having this conversation. It's so nice to have these discussions in the public space so people are made aware of homeschooling and what is happening in the province. I myself, I've been homeschooling for, I've lost track, 15, 16 years now.
Wow.
But majority of that was in the province of Newfoundland, Labrador. I homeschooled probably 13 plus years there. And I have graduated 2, and I still have 2 more at home that I'm homeschooling. Neither of my children have ever seen the inside of a public school building. So they were homeschooled right from K all the way up. And yeah, I just wanted to bring another positive voice or account, to homeschooling. And even though things are a bit backwards in Newfoundland and seems like we're still dealing with policy and school boards and all that, it still is an amazing experience at the end of the day and totally worth any fight you may have to have or any pushback you may get from, friends, family, the public, the government, whatever. It still is a worthy endeavor for you and your children.
What's it like in Nova Scotia now, then?
It's completely different up here. You do have to submit a similar application as to what you would do in Newfoundland, Labrador, and that's pretty much it. And it seems like it's more of a paper trail. You don't hear anything. There's no involvement at the school level. I don't even know if the schools here know my children exist. It's a completely hands-off. Of course, there's more homeschoolers here, and it's just a bigger population, obviously, to begin with. So a lot more little groups and community supports and activities, specifically designed for homeschoolers. But those types of things, unfortunately, come with population, too, which I know is, it's just a completely different landscape in Newfoundland, obviously, because a lot of the province is rural, and has smaller areas. But it is a completely different experience here in Nova Scotia than Newfoundland.
So for Newfoundland and Labrador and the folks here within the system, what do you think they should know about the Nova Scotia system that you think would improve things for parents looking to or who are homeschooling their children? I
would love to see the exact same policy or procedure that they have here adopted in Newfoundland.
Yeah.
Have the paper trail. I understand, not that I agree with it, but I understand sometimes why governments just want that paper trail. They want to keep track of the children. And then after that, hands off. If a parent is homeschooling, a parent is homeschooling. They don't need involvement from the schools. They don't need involvement from the school boards. If a parent should want resources or reach out for those, fantastic. I think the school should be there to have those resources. But if a parent wants to do their own thing, find their own curriculum, fantastic. The world is your oyster. And I will say, up here in Nova Scotia, I want to say 99% of people have nothing to do with the school systems. There's very little of using the school resources or, using what they have available. Now, I do think that the public schools up here do offer the AP course exams to homeschoolers in the high school years, should they want to take those and try to get those AP credits. But I think that's it in terms of school involvement or anything like that.
Last question for you, Sarah, before I let you go. 13 plus years for homeschooling. Oftentimes, parents can take stock of their kids' education, whether it's through the school system or homeschooling, looking at what your kids have learned over the years and the value of their education. What do you think now that for the ones who are finished, the ones who are kind of moving up through still, where are they at with education and the success of it?
So my older 2 that are graduated, they're both in college. They're both doing exactly what they want to do. They're thriving. Nobody knows if they were homeschooled or public schooled. They just fit right in with everybody else. And I was so glad that they had those foundational years at home and they could be who they wanted to be and develop their interest. And there wasn't that same outside influence and pressure from peers. They just got to develop and learn where they were, in their learning and their specialties, and now they're ready to face the world, as young adults. And it's just been a blessing for me to be there for that journey as well. We're all immensely proud of our children once they graduate or they're ready to move on into the world and into post-secondary or whatever it is they decide to do. But there's a unique feeling that comes when you were there every step of the way. and you got to see them get to this point, and now, they're going out into the world, I must say. It's been wonderful, and I can't wait to do it with my other two who are still plugging along.
Sarah Barnes, thanks so much for getting in touch with us today. Your family experience and your thoughts on this, very much valued here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Have a good day.
You too. Sarah Barnes there, calling from Nova Scotia. So, Florence.
Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot.
It's okay. It's okay.
I have a lot to say
I
about
love that
this.
you raise your hand each time because I'm like, oh my God. Let's go.
I think talking about, your kids getting to grow and like junior high, very formative years. I'm doing 2 grades in 1 year this year. And junior high, again, very formative years. So I think not having, like I'm very social. I know what's going on in the world. I know, the trends and all that kind of stuff. But I think not having people around you influencing how you dress, how you act, what your interests are, like, oh, that's so nerdy, or oh, that's so this, or oh, that's so that, is really helpful, because then by the time you're in high school, you're not figuring that out still. You know who you are, and you're ready to be who you are. And you're not going to get some, like for me, I'm going back to high school next year as a regular school. But I think like I'm not going to go back and have some massive culture shock. And that's just not, like if you homeschooled your kids and then they switch to public school or private school or whatever, they're not going to have some massive culture shock. Like I think that's a big thing too, is that they're going to go back if they end up doing that and they're going to be like, what's going on? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, especially like you said, you're in Shallow. There's a bunch of other activities you're doing, right? And like you're going to Chapters after the show today. Tell me what are you going to pick up? There's a book on your list.
Yeah, Sally Rooney.
See,
Intermezzo, her new book. It's really good. She's a really great author, literary fiction. She's really good.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think all of this is telling for what's coming up through the conversation. Anyone else on thoughts on what Sarah was saying?
I just wanted to speak on a little bit another myth in
Yes,
that
please. Go for it.
that by homeschooling you are limiting your child's future.
Yep.
In most cases, you are doing the complete opposite. But something that many people don't realize is that most post-secondary institutions have a homeschool admittance policy. So that means that if I choose with my children not to follow provincial curriculum and pursue their diploma, my child could still go to their university of choice, assuming that they have one of these policies, which most do, and they would write an entrance exam as opposed to the final public exams with the school system. Oftentimes, and I know several homeschoolers whose kids have gone on to be doctors, and just the most brilliant minds have been nurtured at home, and it's amazing. But, I'm totally losing my train of thought now. But yes, you go on, and you're often ahead of the game, is my point.
Yeah, because you're talking about what folks think it's limiting, right?
Yeah, and in reality, you're starting your veering toward your skill, your talent, your future goals earlier. You're able to alter that course to fit what your plans are and make it an educational plan that is yours.
Yeah.
It's not a one-size-fits-all. There's no mythical average child. It's all individuality, and I feel like that's lost sometimes in public schools. That approach is very challenging for kids that have future goals in the arts, for example. And while we've come a long way with what's out there in the public school system, there's still miles to go, and many more advantageous courses to add and things like that. So, yeah.
Gina and Tabitha, I'm just wondering, because I've said we're going to talk about it, we haven't yet, but Magic Storm events. Talk to me about what happened here with your company and the space that's being used.
Yeah, for sure. So I owned a bakery, and I was running out of the farmers market. Gina and her husband own a art gallery, and they were running out of markets as well. And we kind of connected and thought, hey, we should find our own space. And it happened very, very quickly. And since we've gotten in, we've come to find out there's a lot of homeschoolers like us. We offer classes. We're doing after-school chess groups. We're doing art classes, music, a bit of everything.
A bit of everything.
Yoga, martial arts.
There's so many curriculum outcomes we are covering in Magic Storm. Shameless plug.
It's true,
But
though.
no, and then, we ended up connecting with Deetra and Florence and had the space to offer them to hopefully encourage them along their journey too. And
Well, it's amazing. I mean, there's a whole auditorium in there that will host many beautiful shows.
Great acoustics in there.
On the regular.
Really great.
There's movies. And the great part about teaching in that environment, I remember the other day, I'm like, oh, I need an eraser. And I ran out into the art studio area and I grabbed an eraser. And you're surrounded by beautiful things in this wonderful space. And there's coffee and
Lovely people who work there.
and bakery things and little Claires running around. And, it's wonderful. So it is the best possible coming together of like-minded, fabulous folks going, yeah, let's do cool things.
I just want to circle back to what you were saying about, being able to individualize a curriculum. Like, I've known what I wanted to do now for a while. Like, I want to go into music, and that's, my passion, my thing. And I think because I'm homeschooled, I have had so much time obviously outside of Shalloway, which is really great for music and stuff, but also in voice. Like, outside of that, I have had so much more time to focus on my music and my passion that it's wild how much I've gotten done that I wouldn't have gotten done if I was in school for 8 hours a day.
yeah,
And I'm
homeschooling doesn't take 8 hours a day
No,
for one person.
School should not be taking 8 hours a day, man. Like, it really, honestly, we finish, how long were we there today, Mom? Maybe an hour and a half, maybe. And we had so much done. It's wild.
Yeah.
We had a question for someone sent in. Does the homeschooling parent need to have an educational background? And just talking, and the concern for this person is saying, can't imagine being able to teach today's curriculum, especially in math, without education and experience. And I'm just wondering your thoughts on that.
There are lots of thoughts because you do not need an educational background in any sense. The amount of resources, especially given our access to the internet, I mean, anything you need help with, anything your little heart desires is right there. And many of the resources are completely free. You can still utilize, some of the things that the school offers in their curriculum, and then find the supports just like you were if your child was struggling with it in public school. And you would find that, that backup that helps you get through those courses or through those chapters.
In fact, I would say being closer to the curriculum because you're teaching it allows you to support your child so much more. I felt like even prior to the pandemic, I had no idea what was happening in school. There's no homework. They don't do spelling anymore. There's no cursive writing. It's like a black box in the school. I had no idea. How could I support her? And if she had said, I'm struggling with math, I don't even understand what she's struggling with or why. And now I understand. And like I said, everything is, we had a lot of stressful moments around math. Yeah. And I quite frankly don't understand what the problem was because she gets it just like that.
Honestly, my mom, obviously, she has a background in being a university professor. I think I would call myself pretty smart. Like, I'm not struggling, but I think at a regular school, I was not doing great, to be honest. And I think especially for math and stuff like that can be really frustrating for parents. And I'm lucky, my dad is really good at math, so I've had help, but also doing and I have anxiety, so having anxiety around stuff like that, I was in math class literally tearing up. I was like, why can't I get this? And then I'd come home and I'd be like, I need help, and my mom would be like, I don't know what you need help with. I'm like, I don't even know what I need help with. So anyways, she's probably better than any of the teachers I've had who have degrees in teaching, and I had a teacher with I've had teachers with PhDs who don't even teach as well as she does. She also has a PhD though.
We have another.
Now, don't let your head swell over.
I know, right? Let's not increase ego here.
You're just trying to get that book at Chapters. Trying to pave the road to
I need a little
success there,
cash.
Florence. Here's another email that came in. This one from Kaylin Janes. Hi, Adam. Thank you for doing a show to highlight homeschooling in this province. Our family homeschooled one of our children for 3.5 years. I'm fully grateful that this was an option for a child in our family during that time. There are many incredible homeschoolers in this province offering their children rich, experiential, personalized, and supportive learning environments. I will, however, add that many families turn to homeschooling when they have run out of options. Many neurodivergent children have difficulty in a public school environment. Current class sizes and inadequate support staff allocations often do not support the social, emotional well-being of many neurodivergent students. Homeschooling can be a wonderful option for families, but we need to ensure it's an enthusiastic choice and not a choice of last resort due to inadequate support within the public school system. Thank you for bringing attention to this issue. Sincerely, Kaylin. Thank you for that email, Kaylin. And before you, Victor Weston, too. Great to have a dad's perspective in that email today as well. Any thoughts on what Kaylin had to say?
I think homeschooling was our last resort, basically. We tried public school, we tried private school. It was like homeschooling or another private school. You take your pick.
Yeah.
So.
I say preach. Thank you, Kaylin.
Yes,
preach.
queen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Queen.
It's definitely very true. I've gone into my son's classroom when he was in public school, and he would be sitting in his teacher's lap, and she's trying to teach a class of 20-odd kids, and she's sitting on the floor with them because there was no student assistance and not enough support. There's been times when he has left school and he's been seen walking, to a playground by another teacher, and they had to leave school and go get him. And it's not the teacher's fault. It's that they don't have enough supports and there's not enough there. And he's just thriving so well at home with me and at Magic Storm.
Yes.
So there's an ongoing education accord, right? And the report's coming out. I think it's the due date is end of December. What would you like to see from the folks doing the accord around homeschooling?
I would love to see that when a child is given prescribed accommodations, that they actually get them, or that they get them properly, we'll say, and that they can advocate for themselves. One of my daughters has ADHD, and when she would be overwhelmed, she also struggles with a lot of anxiety, and she'd be overwhelmed. And their solution, because there was nowhere else to put her, was to put her in a desk outside the door when the class was too noisy or too chaotic. And what does that look like to the person who's walking down the hallway? Oh, that one got in trouble, and she was so meek and mild. She really disliked how that appeared. And for the most part, she was just, she ended up, by the time we took our children out and actually, as the layers unfolded, how much they were traumatized by not being given what they needed. And she had a substitute teacher argue that she was making up her accommodations to be given extra time or space, doing it just because. When she tried, and this meek little child is trying to tell you what she needs, and you're telling her no.
Yeah. And I think also as a kid with ADHD and generalized anxiety, I think being put outside the classroom has happened before, or being sent down to the guidance counselor's office. And I'm like, okay, so what are we going to do? Count to 5 and breathe? Yeah, that's really going to help right now.
Give me your 10 seconds left. Give me your last thought, Florence.
My last thought is that homeschooling is a choice that the family should be able to make, and that shouldn't be judged by anybody.
Florence Manning, thank you so much for your mom. Dietra Walsh, thank you. Tabitha Hicks, Gina Martin, thank you so much. That is it for today's I Am Looking at the Clock. Yes, we do have less than a minute left. I'm just like, did I jump the gun on that? No, I did not. I timed this thing out so well. Last thing for you folks, I said when I say homeschooling, what comes to mind? What comes to mind? Have your thoughts changed? Email us, thesignal@cbc.ca. We're taking the show on the road. Old Purlican, you're on notice, specifically the library in Old Purlican. We're going to be there tomorrow to talk about the town, the history, what's going on there now, and a bit on the look ahead. And after Old Purlican, it's Bay de Verde, folks. So a couple days out and about on the road. Don't miss these live out and about shows. They're some of my faves. Cheers.